Thank you everyone for joining. Today we have our webinar on flight-free schools, and we have a couple of really fantastic speakers. Slides are being slow. There we go. So first up to speak, we have Anna Hughes, Director of Flight Free UK, followed by Chris Graham, who is a Sustainability Lead at Hills Road Sixth Form College. First, I'm Alison from Let's Go Zero. I'm just going to share a little bit of information about our Let's Go Zero campaign. The campaign is national, UK-wide, for all schools, colleges and nurseries to be zero carbon by 2030. We currently have over 6,000 schools signed up to the campaign. We work as part of a coalition. So the campaign itself is run by Ashton, but we now have 20 other members, coalition members, including WWF, Eco Schools, Fair Trade, alongside many other partners. We're partnered with the National Education Nature Park, the Climate Ambassadors, DFE Sustainability Support for Education, amongst many others. So we really try to take a collaborative approach. By signing up to the campaign, you will get access to a lot of resources, including our monthly newsletter, which always signposts to different funding pots, lots of different guidance. We run competitions for you to win funding for different for putting nature into your schools. We run webinars, about 10 webinars per year on different topics. We'll have experts come in to speak and hear from schools who are actually kind of implementing climate action on the ground. We also have a network of our climate action advisors. They are based regionally throughout England and work more one-on-one with schools to create climate action plans, offer them lots of support in accessing funding. So please do visit our website and sign up to the campaign. So now we have Anna Hughes, who is the Director of Flight Free UK, and she's going to talk to us about how you can reduce or cut out traveling by plane in your schools. Anna, are you all good to go? Perfect.
Sorry, yes, I'm not actually going to share my screen for the moment because, so you can have that one back up if you want, just so people have kind of got the visual, just because my, the slides aren't madly available. But I'm just going to talk because I can explain the project perfectly well, so hopefully that's great for everybody. What I do have is a PDF of the project, which I'm really happy to share and send around afterwards, which I think will be the best way to do it. So forgive me if I'm slightly distracted. Sorry about that, everyone. Really nice to be here. My name's Anna Hughes and I am the director of a charity called Flight Free UK. Our charity encourages people to travel without flying, to reduce emissions, but also to create a culture shift in the norm about travel and to try to encourage the people to not to take flights as a default. So we inform people of the climate impact of aviation and we inspire them to travel by other means. So we run this project called Flight Free Schools, or we're just about to start running it. And the reason is there's many reasons really why it came about, but firstly, because if we are going to create that culture shift, which is what we want, we need to start with young people at the ages when they formulate their habits for later in life. So if we think about school trips, we put children on school trips, we put children on planes to go on their school trips. What do we teach them? Mostly we're teaching them how to fly. We're giving them the idea that this is the way to travel, or this is the only way to travel, or this is the normal way to travel. And actually, if we want people to make low carbon choices later in life, we need to be showing that travel doesn't have to involve a flight, and there are many other ways to get around, especially when it comes to school trips. The educational aspect doesn't necessarily rely on the flight. So yeah, Flight Free Schools is the name of the project, and the aim is to reduce or eliminate the use of air travel for school trips. I used to be a teacher, so this is kind of combining my experience now as a behaviour change specialist with regards to flying, and my past experience and passion as a teacher, just educating the young generation. So yeah, Flight Free Schools, a project to reduce or eliminate the use of air travel for school trips. So how does it work? It is a pledge and it lasts for a year. So it is kind of a signing up, bringing, getting on board kind of project. It's the school works with Flight Free UK to determine what pledge would be appropriate for the school. So there are lots of different levels of pledge, and the school works with Flight Free UK to fulfill the pledge. So for example, a bronze level pledge would be to reduce emissions from overseas travel by 50%, let's say. Or it could be to take one trip within Europe without flying. So some schools, especially in recent years, if they have started to rely on flights for school trips, saying you need to stop doing that is far too scary, far too much. So just committing to reduce by one would be an entry level pledge, and then that hopefully would lead to the next level. So silver, for example, would be to travel overland for 50% of trips in Europe. So that doesn't mean we're eliminating all of longer trips perhaps, but we're saying if you're in Europe, let's see if we can get 50% of those trips without flying. And then another example of a silver pledge would be to reduce the total number of trips taken by air by half. A gold level pledge might be to avoid flights for all European trips, or to eliminate the use of air travel for all school trips, which would be wonderful. And that's what we're aiming towards. Ultimately, we want schools that take part to be part of it for a year, to want to carry on and to pledge to the next level for the next year. Okay, so why do we want schools to sign up? Well, first of all, it's about the emissions reduction, as you can imagine. And I have got a handy chart, which I'd love to show you. I'll tell you what this chart says, and it will be included in the booklet that I send around later. But for example, working with schools to reduce their carbon emissions in all different areas, which is what Let's Go Zero is about. If we're looking at reducing car use for the school run, for example, the school run typically would generate around 250 kilograms of CO2 in a year. You could expend more than that with a school trip within Europe. So all of the savings that you've worked so hard to get through people avoiding driving for the school run could be completely wiped out just with one school trip. And if you're going long haul, then of course that completely blows everything out of the water. So hang on a minute. I'm sort of misrepresenting this because that isn't even one school trip. That is the per passenger emissions of one school trip. So yeah, you are like a trip to Madrid, for example, you're looking at 315 kilograms of CO2 per person on the school trip. So if you're looking at 30 kids, you're multiplying that by 30. So it's huge emission savings by avoiding flights for school trips. And then in terms of the comparison, so we've got flights which are very carbon heavy compared to coach travel, which is very low carbon, and train travel, which is even more low carbon, although logistically train travel can be more of a challenge. So fundamentally, we're focusing on coach travel for these journeys. I already hinted at this at the beginning, because as well as those huge savings in emissions, it is about establishing those low carbon behaviours. So a practical application as well, it's a practical application of climate education. So we are often teaching our children about climate change in the curriculum lessons. But then if we're putting children on aeroplanes for school trips, what are we really teaching them? We're kind of teaching them that their actions don't matter, or these high carbon behaviours are normalized, despite what we're teaching them in terms of theory. So it's both of those things as well. It's also great for inclusion, because often if you have long haul trips particularly, it's really expensive, and you might have families who can't afford to send their kid to New York. If, for example, the school I used to work at, they do their ski trip in New York. Well, there's plenty of snow in the Alps, and that's a coach ride away. So if that were to change to the Alps, then many more children would be able to access that. So it's really key for inclusion as well. And I also hinted at this before in terms of the learning benefits. So what do we want to get out of school trips? From a teacher point of view or from a school point of view, it is curriculum knowledge, expanding the curriculum with kind of real life, especially when it comes to languages. You're going to that place where that language is spoken. History, you're going to that historical site. So the educational value is key, obviously. From a child and pupil point of view, it's about being away from home, having fun with your friends, and learning something. None of those things depend on a flight. So there are so many places in Europe that can bring those exact same learning benefits and the same experience for the pupils without having to get on an aeroplane. So yeah, from the point of view of the involvement, Flight Free UK, as I said, it's about developing that plan in tandem with the school, depending on the school community and where that school is in terms of their emissions reductions and their school trips and their travel. So we'd input to the school travel plan. We do surveys before and after to assess the impact. So that's really important to show how the emissions have been reduced, but also how the project has affected and impacted the wider school community. Have the pupils enjoyed it? Have the teachers enjoyed it? I'm not sure teachers would enjoy sitting on a coach quite so much, but pupils hopefully is enjoyable, and have the parents appreciated it as well. So it's all about looking at the wider school community, and we can develop curriculum materials as well. So all that cross-curricular study, looking at climate change, looking at low carbon behaviour, looking at low carbon travel. So what I'm looking for is for schools to be interested in signing up. I'm kind of in the early stages of talking to schools who would be part of the project. We're in the pilot phase. So if anyone represents schools or knows of schools that might be interested to sign up, even if it is that bronze level of just dipping a toe into the concept, all the way up to those who are already traveling without flying. And we're going to be hearing from Chris in a minute with a great example of that. But yeah, so that's what I'm looking for at the moment. Those schools that could potentially be involved, just to get some case studies. And I will just quickly share my screen because I want to just show you that chart I was talking about, because it's much better to see it rather than me to just talk it through. So hopefully this will work. Oh, no, hang on a second. Here we go. Yes, so hopefully you can see that. So this is the comparison, for example, London to Berlin, just taking that from midair. So it's this is a one-way journey, 160 kilograms by plane per passenger, 31 kilograms by coach per passenger, and then 14 by train, which is fantastic. I can't swipe that, so I'm going to show the next one. Sorry, hold on. And here is that chart I mentioned. So this is where you're looking at comparing the savings you can make from the school run by not driving. So that is right away on the left hand side, 259 kilograms over the course of a year would be saved if people avoid driving. These are averages, of course. And then here are the per passenger emissions for the return flight to these various locations. So London to Paris, 87 kilograms, London to Berlin, 236, London to Madrid, 315. So you're already just with one person's flight completely wiping out all those savings from the school run. Once we get to long haul flights, obviously that's huge emissions. So it really is an easy win for schools in terms of emission savings. And that's all from me. So thank you so much for listening. And yes, I'll be sure to send around the PDF that includes all of that information that I've just said, a couple of case studies and a map of where some likely destinations are. Thank you. Thanks, Alison.
Thank you so much, Anna. That is really interesting. That's pretty stark, that last graph you showed, the school run emissions. Yeah, thank you. Really, really interesting. And yeah, just to say that we will be sending round this recording as well as Anna's slides after the webinar, probably tomorrow. So I think we'll do questions after both your presentations. So we'll save 10 minutes at the end. But now, Chris, we're going to hear from Chris Graham, sustainability lead at Hills Road Sixth Form College, who have declared they are completely flight free. So over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Alison, and hello, everybody. I'm just going to share my slides and present. Yeah, so as Alison was saying, we have gone completely flight free. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about our journey that took us there, really. To start with, I just thought, all this kind of stuff is quite context dependent, so it's important to be familiar with what the context is that I'm talking about. So we are a state-funded post-16 educational establishment. We've got about 3,000 students now. It's a sixth form college, so that's about 1,500 in year 12 and 1,500 in year 13. We're based in Cambridge, by the train station in Cambridge, and our students study A-levels, exclusively A-levels, extended project qualification, and a few other little bits and bobs as well, but their main course is entirely A-levels. And the vast majority of them progress to higher education. So that's us. And I was going to just talk about where we were before we started this journey, what informed our decision to go flight free and how we've embedded that in our strategy, our college strategy, and then what that means for trips now. I've just trawled the data from our trips system to show you what we're currently doing this academic year, 24-25, and I have some feedback and some quotes from departments that have run trips in different ways that I thought I would share with you. And I thought I'd just end with just very briefly our ethos behind the whole of this, which I don't need to go into great detail because, of course, Anna has explained that kind of ethos in general anyway. So our journey towards sustainability in all its aspects of sustainability started in late 2019. The start of that 2019-2020 academic year that went so terribly badly in March of 2020. But we started this thinking about sustainability and what our responsibilities were in relation to sustainability, both in terms of educating our students and in decarbonising our site. And of course, those two things go hand in hand. Anna was kind of mentioning it, that we felt very strongly that we can't educate for sustainability without also trying to be sustainable ourselves. Otherwise, we're being hypocritical. And also, we felt that we were increasing the likelihood of climate anxiety within our students, because if we are educating without demonstrating, then we're kind of saying it's your problem, you solve it. And that, I think, is one of the biggest drivers of climate anxiety. We are the adults in the room and we are the ones with responsibility and opportunity to make a difference. So we feel that the educating for sustainability is more about the ability to then pass the baton on, because it is a multi-generational problem. But actually, we're going to take ownership of the problem at the moment and do whatever we can to fix things, and then encourage our students to join that as they move through beyond their A-levels and into university and so on, and help us decarbonise whilst they're at college as well. So one of the first things we did was trying to build our own baseline carbon footprint to see where we were, to be able to make informed data-driven decisions. So this next slide shows a summary of that carbon footprint. Some of the numbers are based on more robust data than others, inevitably, as these things go. We have 3,000 students commuting from quite a large area. Many cycle and walk, but we have lots of bus journeys and lots of train journeys as well. And it wasn't a massive surprise to us that our student commuting was a very high proportion of our carbon footprint. As Anna was mentioning, the student commute per person is quite small, but with 3,000 people, that quite adds up quite quickly. And you can see in there the key one particularly that was that in the 2018-19 year, our flights, not all college trips, but just our flights, was over 10% of our total annual emissions. You know, that's everything that I could possibly think of or could possibly measure. We don't have a massive food provision on site. There's a little cafe, but students generally bring their own stuff, or they go off site to the co-op just across the road to get food. So there isn't a lot of food going on. There are some other small things that I didn't include, well, potentially big things as well, like construction, but that didn't fall in the scope of what I was doing. But you can see like our total gas bill in terms of sustainability for the whole annual year was, you know, around about half of our flights. Electricity for the whole annual college emissions was only just over 5%, so half of the flight. So we looked at that and we thought we need to address that flights. We had a little look at what those flights were. So if you're interested, what makes up those 11.4% of our annual emissions? It's this. We had 12 trips with flights. One went to China. We got 2 to the USA, Boston and New York, and then the rest are European. Not vast amounts of students, given that we're about 3,000 students. So, you know, the biggest trip there, the 49 students went to Prague. And so each trip there I've put as that counts as our total, as its percentage of our total annual emissions. So 4% for China. If you put the China and the Boston trip together, that's more than our total electricity emissions for the whole of the year. And so on. So, you know, we do try and reduce electricity, reduce gas and so on. But, you know, this to us was a massive opportunity to decarbonize, and actually an easier decarbonizing decision. It was totally within our own hands, totally well, actually not entirely totally cost-free. I'll mention that in a minute, but mostly cost-free. And we really thought that we can't commit to educating for sustainability. We can't commit to targets for decarbonizing without slashing this emissions cost of flights. So the principal was very keen to set targets. We went with kind of national targets at the time. Actually, I was going to mention this. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about this bit. Just as a link back to the previous carbon footprint stuff. So if we look at total waste emissions due to waste and recycling and everything, 0.5%. So one trip to Rome. Anything about recycling initiatives, as Anna's phrase was, it was blown out of the water with a trip to Rome. Totally swamps that. The fuel for our minibus, we have gone electric minibuses, but the fuel for our diesel minibus at the time, 0.3 for the whole year, all those sports trips and everything, one trip to Santander or Montpellier. If we're trying to do water saving, you maybe want to save water for water purposes, but in terms of emissions, that's the same as any of the lowest flight trips. And I mentioned just now the electricity is up there, and the gas is up there too. And if you put 2 of the highest trips together, that encompasses the whole annual thing for electricity and nearly gas too. So anyway, we wanted to make some commitments, and these were our commitments this is a slide from a talk the principal gave to all staff. Reduce our climate emissions by 50% by 2030 and net zero by 2050. And she showed that carbon footprint data. And at that point, we decided we were just at this point coming back from COVID lockdowns. And so there hadn't been trips for a year or more. And so it was an opportunity for a reset. And so along with that opportunity for a reset and along with these targets and along with that carbon footprint, the principal, Joe, shared all that information with staff and said, we can't achieve this 50% reduction really unless we really slash that flight. So we're going to go flight free. That got embedded in our strategic plan. So the guiding document for the whole college. A few years later, so 2023, we were building the strategic plan for 24 to 28. We have a planet strand you can see there. That planet strand as a summary is there in the bottom right. We will be a voice for action on climate change. We will commit to making a tangible difference by role modeling. So there we go. And educating for the action needed locally, nationally, and globally to address the climate and biodiversity emergency. So this is what our driving document that says how we're going to operate for the next 4 years or that 4-year period. Within the planet strand, there are a load of bullet points, and I've just highlighted the one that's significant here. We have committed in our documentation to reducing our carbon footprint by 50% by 2030. The net zero by 2050 one isn't in there because that's not relevant to this strategic plan period, the 24 to 28 period. So that's kind of why we made that decision to go flight free. And so I just wanted to share what happened, share with you, where have we got to now? So we had 12 international trips before going flight free. We still have 7. So some of them still go to the same places. Others have changed where they go. So there's our 7 international trips. They're all European trips. Hamburg is the German exchange. Paris is the French exchange, and there's a Spanish exchange to Santander. So Hamburg and Santander, they wanted to stick to the same place. So they have to go there because there's a long-standing many decades of relationship between those schools in those places. The French exchange changed. They went to Montpellier, but now they go to Paris. And there's a few other ones, ski trip to Andorra, I think it was. So we're still doing a load of trips. I just wanted to talk through some of the comments then from people significantly impacted by the change. Okay. So the PE trip used to go to Boston in the USA to look at sport. And that moved away from being international, and now they go to Manchester and they go to rugby school and do a sports history tour. They go to the Manchester Velodrome and get the students on the BMX track there and on the velodrome, I think. They go to Manchester Met University and look at the Sports Science Centre there, and they go to a variety of live sporting events. The head of PE said that it is now a more academic trip and linked to our students' university options and A-level course than perhaps it was. So, to a certain extent, the Boston was a bit of a jolly, but now they've thought very carefully with that reset, and it's much higher educational value now. The language exchanges, the French changed from Montpellier to Paris. They go on the Eurostar now. It's very, very straightforward from Cambridge to get to St Pancras and then go on the Eurostar. Just as a kind of emissions thing, that changed from a flight that was what is that, over 9,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent for the flight, now to about 205 kilograms for the whole trip. That's not per person, that's the whole trip. The one or the two things that were more complex and people still feel is a slog, and these then I feel for these people because they've taken the brunt of us going flight free. Actually, is the Spanish exchange and the German exchange. So the Spanish still go to Santander. They tried the ferry. It was a 36-hour crossing on a rough sea, and there was lots of unwell staff and students. So they ditched that. They get the coach now, but that's still a very long journey. What they're doing now is exploring to whether to change to a school in Madrid, which will be more easily accessible by train. So they're committed to going flight free, but they have taken the more of an impact than others. They cut their emissions by about to about a quarter or so from what it was when they flew. And then the German exchange, easier journey, but it's still long compared to a flight. But they have slashed their emissions massively from over 4,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide for the trip to just over 200 as well. So that's been the hardest. It's been hardest on those two trips, particularly the Spanish and the German exchanges. In terms of art, the head of art said, in terms of no flights, we've adapted quite easily. We tend to organise more local visits and much more because there's loads to see locally and nationally. They have been to Amsterdam on the Eurostar though. This year the history of art and some photography students went to Paris, but it cost about £700 per student in total. And linking to what Anna was saying, they decided that they're not going to do that again. They're trying to foster a more equal opportunities approach and do many more local visits instead. Geography, they have an optional, or used to have or they do still have an optional international trip each year. They've been to Sicily and Iceland to see sort of volcanoes and stuff, and went to China. They now go to Amsterdam and do lots of coach travel around from Amsterdam. One of the benefits, or one of the drivers of that, is that they are switching from the Earth Hazards unit in geography to the climate change unit. And I just wanted to share that they questionnaire students, and that was very strongly supported by students when they were asking about it, and so they decided to do it. Here's a little graph. I would prefer to study the climate change unit over the Earth Hazards unit. Loads of agree and strongly agree there. They think the climate change is more relevant to their education than earthquakes and volcanoes. Very strongly agree and agree in that. And the other two are about they're not too bothered about if the Earth hazards go. And that helps drive the choice of trip because, Earth hazards, to go and see volcanoes and stuff, there are limited places you can get to without flying. But now they're not going to have to, because they're not going to do the Earth hazards. They're doing all climate change stuff instead because the students want it. And just a little bit to finish, here's just a list of other UK trips we've taken by coach. There's loads of theatre trips, some geography trips to Hunstanton and Thetford, some going to visit some universities, art galleries and so on in there, and trips by train, various things in London. Palace of Westminster was a Let's Go Zero Teach the Future event to take students to campaign about sustainability. The Truman Brewery wasn't a beer trip, it was a photography trip to look at the brewery there. So just to finish then, to add on the other local trips. So we've got trips using our own electric minibuses, not including all the kind of sports trips out to play, to do little sporting events, but lots of other trips as well. So our ethos then, I think it can be summarized by the overall data on that, is that in 2018, 2019, we had 88 trips. This year hasn't finished yet, and we're up to 81 trips already. So we haven't cut down on trips. We do think trips provide very, very valuable experiences. And I think the data shows that we are absolutely committed to that. the one thing that I guess that has driven all of this is that we think we can provide those experiences without the need for flying. So hope that's interesting. Hope that's useful for people listening. That's how we've gone about it and what we've done at Hills Road. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chris. That's really, really interesting. I think great to highlight that there's so much available in the UK that kind of provide the same the same experiences. If anyone has any questions, please pop them in either the chat or in the Q&A box. I had a quick one. Yes, same one as Suzanne. I was going to ask, how did you get parents on board, Chris? Did you have any pushback from them?
We had at the very start, in that first year we went flight free when trips were starting back after the COVID lockdowns. It was the principal that took the brunt of this basically, because complaints got directed to her. And she just held the line and said, well, these are the reasons. And actually the parents were conflicted really, because they said, oh yeah, we really do agree with your stance, but just not for this year with my son or daughter or whatever. So yeah, she just held the line with that, and now nothing, because it's expected. Whereas previously, they'd had elder brothers or sisters that had been on trips, and now they weren't. So flights. But now that's kind of in the distant past. I mean, anecdotally, I have friends that teach in other centres and bump into various parents, around, and I kind of feel there's a kind of mixture, admittedly, that half. Also, it's completely anecdotal, but half of parents are like, oh well, or students maybe even are like, oh no, I won't go to Hills Road. I'll go to somewhere else locally because I want to go on the trip that has a flight to somewhere exotic. But actually, there are also the other half that say, yeah, brilliant, that's really good. I want to come to Hills Road to stand up for sustainability. So, it's by no means one or the other direction there, but I wouldn't be fearful that everyone is going to decide not to go to your school if you don't do flights, because there are definitely positive people to say, yeah, that's brilliant, it'll help me come there.
And I think it goes back to your point about showing students that you're taking action, kind of, especially with the rise of eco-anxiety. So it is probably something that students would feel positive about. Someone has also asked, so just one more for Chris, about pushback from staff, particularly, no more international travel or having to maybe spend 30 hours on a coach. Yeah, how have they handled it?
Yeah, they've handled it. So again, at the beginning, there was a little bit of people coming to me, sort of sustainability leader, and saying, oh, we can't go to Boston anymore. Really? Is it really that bad or whatever? And I'd kind of show them some numbers and say, well, kind of, yes, it is. And really, the impression I got at that point with some of the trips was trying to use arguments to justify what you currently do already, that aren't necessarily where the evidence lies. Because it's change. People don't like change. Everyone doesn't like change, and so when you get change, you think, oh, actually, oh no, surely the change is wrong. And so there was a bit of that. That doesn't happen anymore, because we're a few years in. The people that still don't like the decision, I mean, they accept it, but they still don't like the decision, are the people who have to run the Spanish exchange and the German exchange. Everyone else, absolutely fine with it. But those ones, I mean, they do, to be honest, they do take a hit. And that first trip where they took the ferry across to Santander, I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to have been there. So I massively respect them for taking it on board and doing it and still doing the exchange and everything like that. But I have to admit, they are taking a bit of a hit.
Yeah. I suppose it's inevitable, isn't it? It's great that the kind of policy is still remaining, despite I think there's always going to be some teething problems like that. So Anna, in terms of when schools take the pledge, is there any cost involved at all to joining the
No,
program?
so there's no cost to the school. What the school needs to do is, it obviously takes time, so it will be a bit of a time commitment. But yeah, in terms of how much of a commitment is it, there are initial meetings, of course, with the SLT. There can be meetings for the wider staff if the wider staff needs to be convinced. Planning meetings with the school trip teams for each subject if they need help, and then check-ins with Flight Free UK as needed. And the school would need to also help with carrying out the surveys, the pre-survey and the post-survey. But there's no cost to this for the school, and there's it should work like any other external project. It's another thing the school has to do, so of course that does create logistics and admin in a small way, but the aim is to keep it as light touch as possible.
Great, thank you. And I think we have one final question in the chat. So in terms of costs, so how have you found, because unfortunately the cost of trains is often extortionate compared to flying. How have you found that with school trips, Chris?
Yeah, so it's difficult to compare like with like. So for instance, the PE trip is much, much cheaper now because they go to Manchester and they don't fly to Boston in the USA. But the German, I think, I can't remember whether it's the German or the Spanish exchange or both. It's them again. They are significantly more costly than flying. And yes, like I say, I can't remember whether it's just one or both of those, but the college, the principal agreed to have a bit of subsidy for those trips. The subsidy is in a kind of sliding scale to reduce the subsidy over the years, and it will eventually go on the students. But the college felt that the sort of cliff edge of going from a much cheaper trip to a more expensive one wasn't appropriate. So that's I thought I said I was going to come back to it later in my little presentation, but I never did. But yeah, so that's the extra cost that has come to the college, is a little bit of subsidizing some of those more expensive, significantly more expensive trips.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think we are at time. Thank you both so much for coming along and sharing your experiences and what you do. Really, really interesting. So we will share this recording and Anna will share your slides. Chris, we can share your presentation as well, if that's okay.
Yep, happy to.
And are you both happy to, if people want to get in touch with you?
Yeah,
yep.
Please do. Yeah, if
yep.
you can share our email addresses, Alison, that'd be fine. Fine by me.
Yeah, and by me too. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. We've had some really good feedback in the chat. I think it surprises people how much impact it can have in terms of decarbonisation. Yeah. Great. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Thanks,
Thanks everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for coming. Bye.